Commander Vexthul pressed his massive clawed hand against the cold metal of his warship's viewing window. The blue planet below looked so peaceful, so innocent. But Vexthul knew better than to trust appearances. He had seen thousands of worlds, just like this one, before they burned under Krillian fire. The Krillian Empire had ruled the galaxy for over 3,000 years. Their bodies were living weapons, thick black armor that could stop laser blasts, razor-sharp claws that could cut through steel, and plasma cannons built right into their arms. They stood 12 feet tall and moved like deadly shadows through space. Every species that had ever faced them was now either dead or enslaved. Vexthul's red eyes scanned the planet's surface. Intelligence reports said the creatures down there called themselves humans. They seemed soft and weak, with no natural armor or weapons. Their technology was primitive compared to Krillian standards. This should be another easy conquest, just like all the others, but something felt different this time. On the blue planet below, Admiral Kim stood in the command center of Earth's main defense station. Warning lights flashed red all around him as his officers rushed between computer stations. The alien fleet was massive, hundreds of dark ships that looked like giant insects floating in space. Kim was not a tall man, but his presence filled the room. His dark hair was turning gray at you. The edges and lines of worry marked his face. He had spent 30 years protecting Earth, and he had never faced anything like this before. Captain Lee burst through the doors, her uniform still smoking from a recent training exercise. She was one of Earth's best fighter pilots, known for pulling off impossible maneuvers that made other pilots dizzy just watching. "Admiral, our scouts report the alien fleet is 10 times larger than anything we've ever seen," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. Colonel Park walked in next, his heavy boots echoing on the metal floor. He was in charge of Earth's ground. Forces, millions of soldiers who were ready to fight for their planet. His weathered face showed no fear, only determination. Dr. Hahn was the last to arrive, carrying a tablet full of data about the approaching ships. She was Earth's top scientist, the one person who might be able to figure out how alien technology worked. Her young face was serious as she studied the enemy fleet. All 4 humans stood around the main display screen, watching as hundreds of alien ships moved closer to Earth. The numbers were terrible. For every human ship, there were 20 alien ones. Most military leaders would have already started planning their surrender, but Admiral Kim was not most leaders. Something deep in his eyes burned with a fierce light that had nothing to do with the flashing warning lights around them. It was the same look that had carried humans through ice ages, plagues, and world wars. It was the look of a species that had never learned how to give up. The battle for Earth was about to begin, and neither side truly understood what they were facing. The first Krillian plasma blasts lit up space like deadly fireworks. Human ships exploded one after another, their metal hulls no match for alien weapons that had destroyed entire civilizations. Within minutes, half of Earth's defense fleet was floating debris. Vexthul watched from his command ship as human vessels scattered like frightened fish. This was always his favorite part, the moment when a new species realized they were completely outmatched. Soon a desperate voice would come over the communications asking for mercy, begging to surrender. He had heard it 1,000 times before in 1,000 different languages. The words were always the same. "Please stop. We give up. Have mercy. On our people." But the voice that came through the speakers was nothing like what Vexthul expected. "All units, this is Admiral Kim." The human commander's voice was calm and steady, even as explosions bloomed around his ship. "Fall back to defensive positions. Repeat, fall back to defensive positions. This is just the beginning." Vexthul's claws scraped against his command chair. Just the beginning. These creatures had already lost half their fleet. What did they mean? This was just the beginning. On Earth, Captain Lee pulled her damaged fighter behind a space station, her hands shaking as she checked her instrument panel. 3 of her wingmen were gone, their ships turned to space dust in seconds. But Admiral Kim's voice over the radio had been clear: regroup and prepare for the next phase. Lee looked at her remaining squadron. Only 12 fighters left out of 48. Their faces on her communication screen showed fear, but also something else. The same stubborn determination that had driven humans to climb the highest mountains and cross the deepest oceans. Phoenix. "Squadron, form up on me," Lee commanded. "We're not done yet." Down on Earth's surface, Colonel Park was already moving. Air raid sirens wailed across every major city as millions of people rushed toward underground shelters that had been built years ago. Most species would panic at this moment, but humans had practiced for this day. Children held their parents' hands as they walked calmly into reinforced bunkers. Families carried emergency supplies they had prepared months in advance. Teachers led entire school classes into safety with songs and games to keep the children calm. Park coordinated the evacuation from his mobile command center, watching as entire cities emptied in hours. His radio crackled with reports from around the globe. Seoul evacuation 90% complete. London bunkers at full capacity. New York underground facilities secured. This was not the chaos Vexthul expected to see. Most species collapsed into panic when faced with superior firepower. But these humans moved with purpose, like they had been planning for this exact moment their entire lives. In space, the remaining human ships regrouped behind Earth's moon. They were battered and outnumbered, but they had not surrendered. Admiral Kim's flagship limped into formation, its hull scarred, but its weapons still active. Vexthul realized something disturbing. In 3,000 years of conquest, no species had ever regrouped after losing their first battle. They had all begged for mercy within hours. But these humans were different. They were preparing to fight again. Dr. Han's laboratory looked like a war zone. Pieces of alien metal covered every table, still glowing with strange energy. She had been working for 18 hours straight, her eyes red from staring at computer screens filled with alien code that looked like nothing she had ever seen before. But Han was not just any scientist. She had spent her life solving impossible puzzles, from curing diseases to building faster computers. Now she faced the biggest puzzle of all, how to understand technology from another world in time to save her own. Her hands moved quickly over a piece of Krillian armor that had been blasted off an alien ship. The metal was unlike anything on Earth, but Han noticed something interesting. It had patterns like circuits, but they pulsed with living energy. "It's not just technology," she whispered to herself. "It's alive." Within 6 hours, Han had figured out how the alien shields worked. They used the ship's own energy to create a protective bubble, but they had a weakness. The shields needed a split second to recharge between hits. She immediately called engineer Choi, who was working in the weapons lab 3 floors below. Choi picked up his phone on the first ring. He had been awake for 20 hours, drinking coffee and taking apart human missiles to make them stronger. His workshop was filled with the smell of hot metal and electrical sparks. "Han, please tell me you have good news," Choi said, wiping grease from his hands. "I know how their shields work," Han replied excitedly. "If we can time our shots perfectly, we can get through their defenses." Choi smiled for the first time in days. "How perfectly are we talking?" 0.2 seconds between each shot. "That's impossible for human reflexes," Choi said, then paused. "But not impossible for computers." While Han and Choi worked together to create new weapons, similar scenes played out across Earth. In hidden laboratories and secret military bases, humans were doing something that amazed even themselves. They were learning alien technology faster than anyone thought possible. Engineer Park took apart alien communication devices and learned their language in hours. Scientist Kim studied their engine designs and found ways to make human ships faster. Dr. Lee analyzed alien biological samples and discovered weaknesses in their armor. High above Earth, Vexthul paced in his command chamber, his claws clicking against the metal floor. His scouts were bringing him reports that made no sense. "Commander, the humans have modified their weapons," one scout reported nervously. "Their missiles now carry multiple warheads that fire in sequence." "Impossible," Vexthul growled. "No species has ever understood our technology so quickly." Another scout entered, looking even more worried. "Sir, they're also jamming our communications using our own frequencies." Vexthul's red eyes burned with anger and confusion. Throughout the galaxy, it took other species decades to even understand basic Krillian technology. Most never figured it out at all before they were conquered. But these humans were different. They looked at alien wreckage and saw possibilities instead of mysteries. They took broken pieces of advanced technology and improved them in ways that even surprised their creators. In the depths of space, a small human patrol ship tested its new weapons on an asteroid. The modified missiles struck in perfect sequence, each one hitting exactly 0.2 seconds after the last. The asteroid, protected by captured Krillian shields, cracked and exploded. The human captain smiled and radioed back to Earth. "Admiral Kim, the new weapons work perfectly. We're ready for round 2. Something was very wrong with this conquest, and Vexthal was beginning to realize that he might have underestimated these strange creatures called humans. The Krillian drop. Ships descended through Earth's atmosphere like black metal rain. Vexthal watched from orbit as thousands of his warriors landed in major cities around the planet. Each Krillian soldier was a perfect killing machine, 12 feet of armored death designed for close combat. But when the landing ramps opened, the warriors found something they had never encountered before. Empty streets, silent buildings, no crowds of terrified civilians running in panic. In Seoul, a Krillian patrol marched down what should have been a busy shopping district. Their heavy footsteps echoed off empty storefronts. Windows stared down at them like dead eyes. It felt wrong, like walking through a graveyard. "Where are all the inhabitants?" growled Commander Thexville into his communication device. Before anyone could answer, the street exploded. Sergeant Kang had been waiting in the storm drain below the road for 3 hours. He and his team had placed explosives under the exact spot where the aliens would walk. When the charges went off, 3 Krillian warriors disappeared in a cloud of smoke and flying concrete. The remaining aliens spun around, looking for enemies to fight, but found only empty air. Kang and his soldiers were already gone, moving through the underground tunnel system that connected every major building in the city. This was not how Krillian warfare was supposed to work. For 3,000 years, they had landed on planets and faced enemy armies in direct battle. They were built for strength against strength, armor against armor, but these humans refused to fight that way. 2 blocks away, Private Moon triggered another trap. A seemingly abandoned apartment building collapsed on a group of Krillian soldiers as they searched for civilians. The aliens had incredible strength, but even they could not lift tons of concrete and steel. By the end of the first day, Kang's urban fighters had eliminated 40 Krillian warriors without losing a single human soldier. They struck from shadows, disappeared into tunnels, and vanished like ghosts. Meanwhile, in the countryside outside the city, Captain Yoon was conducting a different kind of warfare. Her resistance cell had been watching Krillian supply convoys for days, learning their routes and timing. The aliens sent their supplies in heavily armored vehicles that could survive direct missile hits. But Yoon had noticed something interesting. The convoys always took the same roads, always at the same times. "Humans are creatures of habit," Yoon told her team as they prepared their ambush. "But apparently, so are aliens." Her fighters had spent the night digging holes in the mountain road and filling them with explosives. When the Krillian convoy rounded the corner, the entire mountainside came down on top of them. The surviving aliens climbed out of their damaged vehicles, ready to fight whoever had attacked them. But the forest was silent. Yoon's team had already moved to their next position miles away. Back in orbit, Vexthal received increasingly frustrated reports from his ground commanders. "The humans will not engage in proper combat," complained one officer. "They hide like cowards and strike from shadows." "Then root them out of their hiding places," Vexthal ordered. But that was easier said than done. Every time Krillian forces entered a building to search for humans, they triggered traps. Every time they pursued fleeing fighters, they walked into ambushes. The humans had turned their entire planet into one giant weapon. Sergeant Kang emerged from a subway tunnel just long enough to watch another Krillian patrol fall into a pit filled with sharpened metal spikes. The aliens were incredibly tough, but they were not invincible. "Welcome to Earth," Kang whispered, before disappearing back into the darkness. Major Song crouched in the ruins of what used to be a shopping mall, watching a group of Krillian soldiers through her night vision scope. Her Special Forces team had been tracking this patrol for 6 hours, learning their patterns, studying their weaknesses. But Song was not planning a simple ambush. She was planning something far more dangerous. "Wolfpack Alpha to all units," she whispered into her radio. "Target acquired. Begin coordination protocol. 3,000 miles away in Tokyo, Lieutenant Bay received the message. He was hidden on a rooftop, watching a different group of Krillian warriors. His reconnaissance team had been gathering information about alien patrol routes for weeks. Wolfpack Beta in position, Bay replied quietly. Target locked. On the other side of the world in London, Communications Officer Lim sat in front of multiple computer screens in an underground bunker. Each screen showed a different human team scattered across the globe. All of them were watching Krillian patrols. All of them were ready to strike. All wolf packs, this is control, Lim announced. Synchronized attack begins in 30 seconds. This was something completely new in galactic warfare. Most species fought in single locations, with armies facing each other directly. But humans had evolved as pack hunters on a dangerous planet. They knew how to work together across vast distances to bring down prey much larger than themselves. Song's team moved like shadows through the mall ruins. Each soldier knew exactly where the others were without needing to speak. They communicated with tiny hand signals and eye movements that the Krillians could never detect. The aliens were incredibly strong and well-armed, but they had one major weakness. They fought as individuals even when in groups. Each Krillian warrior was trained to be a perfect killing machine on his own. Humans were different. They were weaker individually, but they became incredibly dangerous when working together. Target Alpha, moving to position 3, Song breathed into her microphone. At the same moment, Lieutenant Bay was saying the exact same thing about his target in Tokyo. Across the planet, 12 different human teams were preparing to strike 12 different alien patrols at exactly the same moment. If one team attacked too early, it would warn the others. If one team was too late, the coordination would fail. Lim watched the countdown timer on his main screen. 10 seconds. All units prepare. The Krillian warriors had no idea they were being hunted. They had never faced an enemy that could coordinate attacks across multiple continents simultaneously. Their military training focused on individual combat skills and local command structures. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Execute! Song's team struck first. Her sniper took out the lead Krillian with a shot that pierced a weak spot in his armor that Dr. Han had identified. At the exact same moment, explosives planted by her demolitions expert brought down part of the mall ceiling. In Tokyo, Bay's team attacked with perfect timing. Their target patrol was caught in a crossfire from 3 directions while trying to navigate through a narrow alley. Similar scenes played out in London, Paris, Moscow, Sydney, and 6 other cities around the world. Within 60 seconds, 12 Krillian patrols had been eliminated simultaneously by coordinated human attacks. Up in orbit, Vexthul stared at his tactical display in complete confusion. His ground forces were reporting attacks happening everywhere at once. It was impossible. No species had ever demonstrated this level of coordination. How are they communicating so quickly, across such distances? He demanded from his communications officer. But the Krillian officer had no answer. Their rigid military structure had never needed to deal with enemies who fought like a single organism spread across an entire planet. Song smiled as she watched her team disappear back into the ruins. Somewhere across the world, 11 other teams were doing the same thing. The hunt was just beginning. Vexthul stood in his ship's bioweapons chamber, staring at containers filled with deadly viruses that had wiped out entire civilizations. His traditional warfare tactics were failing against these stubborn humans. It was time to use the ultimate weapon. Release the Crimson Death, he ordered his weapons officer. Target all major population centers. The bioweapon had never failed. It was designed to attack the nervous system of any carbon-based life form. Within hours, entire planets would fall silent. Within days, nothing would be left alive. Crimson clouds began falling from the sky over Earth's major cities. The virus was invisible, tasteless, and spread through the air like morning mist. People breathed it in without knowing they were being poisoned. Dr. Han was working in her laboratory when the first reports came in. Hospitals across the globe were filling with patients showing the same symptoms: fever, difficulty breathing, and nerve damage that spread through their bodies like fire. It's a biological weapon, Han announced to her emergency medical team. "We need to find a cure, and we need to find it fast." But this was unlike any disease Han had ever seen. The alien virus attacked human cells in ways that should have been impossible. It seemed designed to kill quickly and efficiently, leaving no survivors. Within 6 hours, thousands of people were dying. Within 12 hours, the death toll reached millions. Medical specialist CO worked frantically in field hospitals, trying to keep patients alive long enough for Han to find a solution. "Doctor, we're losing them too fast," Seo reported over the radio, his voice exhausted. Around him, medical tents were filled with people fighting for their lives. "The virus is spreading faster than we can treat it." But something strange was happening. Some humans were surviving longer than others. Researcher Jin noticed the pattern first, while analyzing blood samples from different patients. "Dr. Han, look at this," Jin called out excitedly. "The virus affects people differently based on their genetics. Some humans have natural resistance." Han studied Jin's data carefully. Throughout human history, diseases had killed millions of people, but some always survived. Those survivors passed on their resistance to their children. Humanity had been fighting biological warfare for thousands of years, against smallpox, plague, and countless other deadly diseases. "We're not just fighting one virus," Han realized. "We're fighting with the experience of every disease humanity has ever survived." Working around the clock, Han's team began developing treatments using blood samples from the naturally resistant survivors. But the real breakthrough came when Jin discovered something incredible. Some humans were not just surviving the alien virus, they were becoming immune to it. "Their immune systems are learning," Jin reported in amazement. "They're adapting to the alien weapon faster than it can kill them." Medic CO watched in wonder as patients who should have died began recovering. Children who had been near death were sitting up and asking for food. Adults who had been unconscious for days were walking out of medical tents. Up in his command ship, Vexthal received reports that made his blood run cold. The bioweapon that had destroyed 17 different species was failing against humans. Not only were they surviving, but they were developing immunity. "Impossible," Vexthal snarled. "Nothing survives the Crimson Death." But his sensors told a different story. Human cities that should have been graveyards were showing signs of recovery. People were returning to the streets. Factories were starting up again. Even more terrifying, the human military was still fighting. Soldiers who had been exposed to the deadly virus were back in combat within days, now carrying immunity that made them impossible to poison. Dr. Han looked at her latest test results and smiled for the first time in weeks. Not only had they defeated the alien bioweapon, but they had learned how to use its own genetic code to make humans stronger. "Jin, prepare the immunity boosters for mass production," she ordered. "If they want to play with biological weapons, let's show them what 4 billion years of evolution looks like." Vexthal realized he was facing something he had never encountered before, a species that treated extinction as just another problem to solve. Admiral Kim stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching as hundreds of human ships emerged from behind Earth's moon. But these were not the same vessels that had been destroyed in the first battle. These ships gleamed with alien technology, fused with human engineering. "All units, this is Admiral Kim," his voice echoed across the fleet. "Operation Phoenix begins now. Show them what happens when humans get angry." The Krillian fleet hung in space like a dark cloud, confident in their superior firepower. Vexthal watched the approaching human ships with amusement. These creatures never learned. He had already destroyed their fleet once, now he would finish the job. But something was different about these human vessels. They moved in patterns that seemed impossible, twisting and spinning through space in ways that defied the laws of physics. Pilot Nam gripped the controls of her fighter as she led Phoenix Squadron into battle. Her ship was a fusion of human creativity and alien technology. Sleek earth metals wrapped around Krillian energy cores, with weapons that could punch through any armor. "Phoenix leader to all wings," Nam called over the radio. "Remember, they expect us to fly like humans. Time to show them we learned a few new tricks." Nam's fighter suddenly vanished from Krillian sensors, reappearing 3 seconds later behind an enemy battleship. The alien targeting computers couldn't track movement that fast. Before the Krillians could react, Nam's enhanced weapons tore through their rear shields. All around the battlefield, human pilots were performing maneuvers that should have been impossible. They used captured alien cloaking technology to disappear and reappear like ghosts. They combined human creativity with Krillian power to create weapons that even their creators had never imagined. Down on Earth's surface, Captain Ryu led his ground forces in the final push against alien occupation troops. His soldiers carried weapons that looked like nothing either species had ever built before. Human rifles that fired Krillian plasma bolts, alien armor modified with human electronics. Alpha Company, advance on the enemy position, Ryu commanded. As his troops moved through the ruins of downtown Seoul, remember, these weapons are more powerful than anything they have. The Krillian defenders had taken shelter in what used to be a shopping center, turning it into a fortress. But Ryu's soldiers were carrying hybrid weapons that could cut through alien armor like paper. When the humans attacked, the alien fortress crumbled in minutes. Sergeant Mock kicked down the door of an alien command post, his modified plasma rifle charging with deadly energy. The Krillian warriors inside raised their weapons, but they were using old technology against soldiers equipped with the next generation of warfare. "Surrender now," Mock called out in broken Krillian language that Dr. Han had taught him. "Your own weapons work better in human hands." In space, the battle was turning into a complete disaster for the Krillian Empire. Vexthul watched in horror as his advanced warships were outmaneuvered and outgunned by humans using improved versions of Krillian technology. "How are they doing this?" he demanded from his tactical officer. "Those are our weapons, our shields, our engines." "Yes, Commander," the officer replied nervously, "but they have modified them in ways we never considered." Pilot Nam's squadron had just destroyed 3 Krillian cruisers using a tactic that combined human pack hunting with alien stealth technology. Her fighters would surround an enemy ship while invisible, then attack from all directions simultaneously. Captain Ryu's ground forces were advancing faster than anyone had thought possible. His soldiers moved like the guerrilla fighters who had caused so much trouble earlier, but now they carried weapons that could destroy alien positions with single shots. Engineer Choi's modifications had turned human creativity loose on alien technology. Where the Krillians had built weapons for individual combat, humans had redesigned them for coordinated attacks. Where aliens had created defensive systems, humans had found ways to turn them into offensive weapons. Admiral Kim smiled as he watched the enemy fleet begin to retreat. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Krillian Empire was losing a battle. "All units, pursue the enemy," he ordered. "Let's show the galaxy that Earth is under new management." The hunters had become the hunted specialist. O drifted silently through the darkness of space, her modified stealth suit making her completely invisible to Krillian sensors. She had been tracking Commander Thexeval's flagship for 3 days, learning its patterns, studying its weaknesses. The Krillians had invented stealth technology to hunt other species without being detected. Now that same technology was being used against them, and they had no idea how to defend against it. O watched through her scope as Krillian patrol ships moved in formation around their command vessel. The aliens still thought they were the hunters, not realizing they had become the prey. "Ghost 1 to control," O whispered into her radio. "Target confirmed. Beginning infiltration." Commander Ju received the message on his assault ship hidden behind a nearby asteroid. His boarding team was ready. 20 of humanity's most dangerous soldiers, equipped with weapons that could cut through any alien defense. "Copy that, Ghost 1, Ju replied. "Boarding team standing by." O activated her personal cloaking device and flew toward the Krillian flagship. The alien sensors that should have detected her approach saw nothing but empty space. She landed on the ship's hull like a shadow, completely unnoticed, using tools, reverse-engineered from Krillian technology. O cut through the ship's armor as quietly as a surgeon. Within minutes, she had created an entry point that the aliens would never find. Inside the enemy ship, Krillian warriors patrolled the corridors with confidence. They had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. No enemy had ever boarded there. Vessels and lived to tell about it, but O moved through their ship like a ghost, planting small devices that would disable their shields and weapon systems. The Krillians walked right past her hiding spots, never knowing death was standing 3 feet away. "Ghost 1 to assault leader," O transmitted. Package delivered. Ship is ready for boarding. Jew's assault ship decloaked directly beside the Krillian flagship. Before the aliens could react, magnetic clamps locked the two vessels together, and cutting torches began burning through the hull. Breach in 5 seconds, Jew announced to his team. Remember, we want prisoners and intact. Technology. Try not to blow up the whole ship. The boarding action was swift and brutal. Jew soldiers poured through the breach like water through a broken dam, their hybrid weapons cutting down any Krillian who tried to resist. But this was not mindless destruction. It was precision hunting. Each human soldier knew exactly where to go and what to capture. They had studied the ship's layout for days, memorizing every corridor and room. The Krillians, caught completely off guard, could not mount an organized defense. Commander Thexval found himself cornered in his own command center, surrounded by humans carrying weapons he recognized as improved versions of Krillian technology. Impossible, he growled, his claws scraping against the metal floor. No species has ever successfully boarded a Krillian warship. Well, Jew said with a cold smile, there's a first time for everything. Similar scenes were playing out across the battlefield. Human hunting packs were systematically capturing Krillian vessels, using stealth technology to approach undetected and boarding techniques perfected through months of practice. Back on Vexthul's command ship, panic was spreading through the crew. Reports were coming in from across the fleet, ships going silent. One by one, commanders disappearing without explanation. "Sir, we've lost contact with 12 vessels in the last hour," reported his communications officer, fear obvious in his voice. Vexthul stared at his tactical display, watching as green dots representing his ships turned red and vanished. The E. Humans were not just fighting back, they were hunting his people with deadly efficiency. For 3,000 years, the Krillian Empire had been the galaxy's ultimate predators. They had hunted entire species to extinction, turning conquest into an art form. Now they were experiencing something completely new, the terror of being hunted by creatures who were better at it than they were. O emerged from another captured ship, her mission complete. Another Krillian commander was now prisoner. Another vessel was under human control. "Ghost 1 to all units," she reported. "Target secured. Moving to next objective." The greatest hunters in the galaxy were learning what it felt like to be prey. Vexthul's command ship shuddered as another human torpedo struck its hull. Around him, his bridge crew worked frantically to escape the nightmare that Earth had become. Half his fleet was gone, destroyed, captured, or simply vanished without a trace. "All remaining ships retreat to jump coordinates," Vexthul ordered, his voice heavy with defeat. "We are abandoning this system." For the first time in 3,000 years, the Krillian Empire was running from battle. Ships that had conquered entire galaxies were fleeing from a single blue planet like frightened animals. As his vessel prepared to enter hyperspace, Vexthul activated the emergency communication system that connected directly to the Galactic Council. This message would reach every major species in the galaxy within hours. "This is Commander Vexthul of the Krillian Empire," he began, his claws trembling as he spoke. "I am issuing a Class Omega warning about the species inhabiting the third planet of the Sol system." He paused, looking at the tactical display showing his retreating fleet. Dozens of ships lost to creatures he had dismissed as primitive and weak. These humans are not like any species we have encountered. They do not just survive extinction events, they evolve beyond them. They turn every weapon used against them into something stronger. They adapt faster than should be possible. Vexthul's voice grew more urgent as human pursuit ships appeared on his sensors, still hunting his fleeing vessels even as they tried to escape. "We came to harvest a weak species and found the galaxy's true apex predators. They have taken our technology and improved it beyond our understanding. They fight with coordination we cannot match. They refuse to surrender, even when facing certain death." The transmission cut out as Vexthul's ship jumped into hyperspace, carrying the survivors of the once mighty Krillian fleet away from Earth forever. Down on the planet's surface, Admiral Kim stood in what used to be the ruins of Sol. But the city was already being rebuilt, and the new buildings incorporated both human engineering and captured alien technology. Construction crews worked around the clock, using Krillian energy tools to build structures stronger than anything Earth had ever seen. Children played in parks where just weeks ago fierce battles had raged, but now those same children were learning to read alien languages and understand technology from across the galaxy. Humanity was not just recovering from the invasion, they were growing stronger because of it. Dr. Han walked up to Admiral Kim, carrying a tablet displaying her latest research. "Admiral, we've finished analyzing the Krillian biological weapons. We can now create vaccines for diseases that don't even exist yet." Engineer Choi approached from the other direction, his hands still dirty from working on captured alien engines. "Sir, we've figured out how their faster-than-light travel works. We can improve it by at least 40%. Captain Lee's voice crackled over Kim's radio from somewhere in orbit. "Admiral, our new ships are ready for testing. The fusion of human and Krillian technology is exceeding all expectations." Kim smiled as he watched human workers installing alien power cores into Earth's defense satellites. Humanity had faced extinction and turned it into evolution. They had been attacked by the galaxy's most feared predators and emerged as something even more dangerous. Across the galaxy, Vex Thul's warning spread from species to species. The message was clear. Something new had awakened in the universe. Something that treated impossible odds as merely another challenge to overcome. In deep space, human scout ships equipped with improved alien technology began their first missions beyond the solar system. They carried a simple message to any species they encountered. Earth was under new management, and the new managers were very interested in making friends, but they were even more interested in making sure that no one ever threatened their home. Again, the galaxy's apex predators had been replaced, and the new rulers had learned their lessons well.